There's a passage of scripture in Psalms chapter 121, verses 1 and 2. And it's a very simple passage that sometimes we hear in songs, we hear in music, and we hear it in passing. But I've taken this scripture passage deeply to heart over the last few years because it's really helped me to fix my focus to where it matters, fix my focus to where it belongs, and fix my focus to what gives me actual factual peace. This scripture says that I'll lift my eyes to the hills from which cometh my help. The beginning of this passage, lifting my eyes, was really, really big to me because there was a time in my life after going through public kind of, humiliation, where the intention was to remind me over and over of my wrongs, remind me over and over of my mistakes and my downfalls. The intention of a community was to continue to remind me of where I fell. I had to hear what they were saying and understand where they were coming from, but at the same time be able to look in the direction of where I needed to go next. There's a difference between conviction and condemnation, and the enemy comes as the accuser of the brethren, not necessarily to help you to remember where you've come from so that you can grow, but help you to remember what you've come from so you can be stagnant. It has a element of shame around it. It has an element of guilt around it, an element of just complete humiliation and embarrassment. While it's important to notice where you've made mistakes, where you've fallen, where you've gone wrong, it's also important to notice that God is much bigger than any mistake that you make. God's wisdom is infinite. And so what's exciting about his wisdom being infinite is that he can outthink any situation that happens in our life. There's nothing that we can experience that he can't think through. When we think in our human body and in our human physicality, we think based on our human ability. So we think based on the fact that our arm is 4 feet long. We think based on the fact that on our tippy toes we are still 5'9". But God doesn't have to think in those types of limitations and structures. He doesn't need time to tell him what he can do. He can insert his thoughts into time as he sees fit. And so we do ourselves a disservice when we try and outthink our situation. Try and outthink hate. Try and outthink discomfort. Try and outthink a circumstance. The word circumstance is important to me. It means a lot because it reminds me that if you can stand, then you can still be content. You can still find peace. There are just things that are going to be around you. That's what a circumstance is. It's the things around your stance. It's the things that try and encircle you in the midst of coming into your own. While I was in the midst of coming into my own, I was surrounded by noise. I was surrounded by hate. I was surrounded by unkindness. And a part of me wanted to break. A part of me wanted to fall. But I had learned about who God said I was far before my misstep. And so I was able to hold fast to who I knew God to be. That doesn't mean that I don't have a circumstance. That doesn't mean that I am in the middle of a situation that's uncomfortable. It just means that I know I'm going to come out on the other side. That doesn't mean I know how. That doesn't mean I know when. And that doesn't mean that I understand the methodology to me getting out of that situation. Why? Because I don't have the infinite thought, the infinite wisdom that God has. While he can see my end from my beginning, I'm in a circumstance. And in this moment, I stand. In this moment, I stand. And I stand solely because I know that God is able. When I sing at the inauguration, the words in the song said, all things are working out for my good. He's intentional, never changing, never failing. And the scripture behind that song is, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Most people, if you ask them, what did Chrisette sing at the inauguration? Have no idea, right? They have no idea. They might think I sang a jazz song or one of my own R&B records. But when I went to that place to share this music, my intention and Travis Green's intention was to bring the light to a very dark place. Does that mean that we made the right choice? No. Does that mean that we knew the outcome and knew what it was going to be? No. Does that mean that we didn't hurt anybody? No. As a matter of fact, so many people were hurt, disappointed, and disenfranchised from our choice that we went from television station to television station, CNN to CBS News and all these different places, to let people know that we apologize for the way that we made people feel. We apologize for the place in people that we triggered. But after the apology was finished and after we said it however many times, dozens of interviews, dozens of comments, dozens of different spaces that we went into, we couldn't stay in the circumstance. We couldn't stay on the outsides of what was happening to us. We had to find our balance, and we had to stand up in the midst of all the noise. A lot of times when you stand up in the midst of noise, a lot of times when you're in the midst of a circumstance, nobody knows you're standing. Because you're surrounded by so much noise and so much distraction. People are distracted by the noise and they can't see your strength. And so we wonder, will anybody ever notice that God is on my side? Is anybody ever going to notice that I'm going to be okay? Is anybody going to stop asking me if I need prayer, if I need help? At what point are people going to know that God is with me? The most uncomfortable time of the season of rejection for me is, or was, wondering if people could tell who I was. Wonder if people could tell that I had the presence of God in my life, that I had the peace of God in my life, that I had the joy of the Lord in my life. I was seeing all these headlines of how depressed I was and how I had left my community and how I didn't want to serve or come back anymore. And that was a point where I began to say to myself, okay, I'm still here. I'm still strong. I'm still standing. I began to hear people say things like, come back, Chrisette. Chrisette, when are you going to come back? And I would say to myself, well, I never left. I was left. People left me, but I didn't leave. As a matter of fact, the reason why I'm in this situation is because I showed up. So the beginning of rejection and the discomfort there is that standing in the middle of all that pressure and all that noise, it's imperative that we lift our gaze. It's imperative that we look up to the hills. Why? Because if we stick around long enough looking at what's around us, we'll begin to call ourselves what people are calling us.